Okay, we're going to switch gears a little bit. It's such a turbulent retail climate right now and has changed so much over the last 10 years. Anya, I'm curious to know, we were talking about this earlier, what you're most excited about or worried about.
Well, I think that when there's times of change, it's actually hugely exciting. And I know the fear and excitement thing I said earlier, but genuinely, I think that's when sort of bits of magic happen. And it's very easy to sit on the Titanic and play the violin and think it's all going to be the same. But actually, when you have something as exciting as the internet coming into the world and actually changing the way people interact with product and decisions, there's all sorts of opportunities. And so you have to be quite bold, I think, and lean into change and not be scared and try things and just follow your gut. So I think it's an interesting moment. I think ultimately there's going to be a lot of challenges with the wholesale business, unless you run it as beautifully as you do, where you know your customers. And I'm afraid there's an awful lot of wholesale business that doesn't do that, so it's not so healthy. And then you get into that spiral at the moment where you can see all these wholesale customers that they're all discounting and it's all kind of quite frantic. But ultimately, if you make a beautiful product and you have a lovely customer who likes your product, there's a future. And it's sort of navigating and finding the right way to that and not being sort of scared to try different things. So I've always quite liked the uncomfortable. That's actually kind of a happy place for me, which is kind of uncomfortable in itself, but it's where I sit. So I think it's a time to experiment and see, and just to kind of really get to know your customer and work out what feels right.
Laura, could you answer that question too? Like, how have things changed the retail environment? You've had to pivot. You invented House Account, which was a mobile shopping app.
Yeah, that crashed and burned. I mean, but I was talking to somebody about it today. Farfetch tried to buy it twice, and it ended up just blowing up, and we lost everything. But I have zero regrets. I mean, it was such an incredible experience to do something completely different that I knew nothing about, and to learn about it, and to build a team around it. And I think all experience is good experience. I always told Fifi, my daughter, that even bad boyfriends are good because you see what you don't want. So I think all experience is helpful if you learn from it. I don't know what the question was, but that.
Yeah. Well, and Greg, I think that retail store that you created that had the virtual streaming opportunity in the back was genius. And as you think about what's next for Beautycounter, you may not even be there yet, but do you have a vision for what the actual brick and mortar presence will look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think that currently Beautycounter is in like 580 Ulta locations, so there is their retail presence, and there's the independent stores that we have. But I'm very much a believer, and I have been for a while, that your community is your client is your community. Community-based commerce is kind of the way of the future, meaning that there are communities that surround brands that are passionate about the brands and what the core tenets of those brands are. And I think that one of the things when I sold the business, it was going really, really well, and it was towards the end of the pandemic. And what I think one of the things that was challenging about the business over the last number of years, and we are going to hopefully start to get this back on track, is that people want physical interaction. So they like the convenience of online shopping. So they're transactional in those moments, and certainly from a replenishment standpoint or a browsing standpoint, online is a really important part of any consumer-facing business today. And people really love the opportunity to be. This is why the Brentwood Country Mart is such an amazing place. Really, it doesn't honestly. Yes, the brands here are great, but it's about community. This place is emblematic of what's happening in retail today, which is you have high-quality product that is built on community. The business, everyone comes here. The most powerful people in the world come here every single day because there's a community aspect to the Brentwood Country Mart. And I think so good job, Jim, honestly. So I think to me, it's that people do want an opportunity. And so when I think about Beautycounters, I think futuristically, if I can just get through this week, is that I think that we need to have more shops and maybe in less obvious places because everyone's so obsessed with the coasts. And maybe you need to be in smaller cities where you become important and you become a gathering spot for the community that supports your brand, complemented by your online presence so that your customer is able to move seamlessly through channels to get what they want when they want, which they need. But I think there's something powerful about that right now, about being able, which is what you've done so brilliantly in London. If you guys haven't been to, she can call it Anya's Village. I would just call it Anya's World. It's like the entire city of London is now dedicated to Ms. Hindmarch over here. She has like a whole, she has like her own Brentwood Country Mart, just happened to be called Anya, with like every shop you can imagine on like a couple blocks. But it's like there's a community that goes in and out of these shops, and I've watched it. I'm one of those people, and it's the same thing here. It's the same thing when I walk into your shop. And I have in Charlotte too. Everyone's talking, and there's a community aspect of it, and people want to gather. And so retail is important. That's never going to go away.
Yes, it's really about just creating connection between customers. I was astounded when, Laura, you told me that you knew your customers so well that nearly 50% of the inventory was sold before it even hit the floor. It's impressive.
Yeah, I mean, every order has names about every single thing we pull. Because we know so-and-so's daughter's getting married and she just got divorced and she's going to have to be with a new wife. And, we know what, just all the
intimate
minutia of all-
details.
Yeah. I mean, that's our job, I think, is to help people manage those things.
Which is annoying because nothing's ever on sale. Sadly.
So true.
It's true.
Anya, what's next at the Village? What's coming up? Are you allowed to share?
Yes, I'd have to kill you, obviously, but it should be a great show. No, we've actually, the next, it's currently a summer shop, which is really lovely. It's like a really old-fashioned, the sort of tourist shop you might find on holidays. It's kind of really lots of weird little funny things. And then we move back into ice cream, which is, we have these, it's
Crowd
a third,
pleaser.
it's just, we have these very unusual flavors of ice cream. So things like baked beans and Liam Perrin sauce and soy sauce, kikkoman, and they're all made, homemade in this amazing local place. And so, yeah, it's a bit mad, so that's next.
So you both sold your businesses, is that correct? And then you bought them back. So did you sell them because they got to a point where you were super successful and you could sell them for a lot of money? And then did you set it up where you were part of that still, like on the board, and had some control? And is that why now you, for example, recently rebought your business? I'm just curious how that went.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to say this carefully because this could go out to the world. So I sold my company. So when I built Beauty Counter, when I first started, I didn't have all that much money to put into it, and it was incredibly expensive because we created clean beauty, and there was no such thing, and it cost a lot of money. So I raised a bunch of capital from individuals and then private equity firms. And typically, I'm sure most of you know this, but for those who are listening that don't, private equity firms usually have, there's a shelf life. They need to turn a profit within 5 to 7 years because those funds need to keep, replenishing, et cetera. So we had been approached by a large strategic 2 years prior to selling, and it was a really, really high valuation, and the investors really wanted me to sell, and I wasn't ready yet. And then when we were approached to do this, the second round, I knew that they were going to force me to sell because that's what private equity does. The market was strong. We were booming as a company at the time, and we could command $1 billion valuation, and so we went hard at it. The reason that, so that's the first part of it, and that's oftentimes, the case for, and I think that we would all say this, when you bring in outside capital, you need to know that they have an agenda that is not always your agenda. But it's also part of life now because it's really hard to build a business in today's consumer market. It's very different than it used to be where you had a store and then you had a website and then you had a customer service function. Consumers want everything day one, and it's expensive to do that. And then the second piece of it, I was hired, I was to be CEO. The intention was for me to be CEO, and unfortunately the business faltered in the first few months after I sold it, and the company that bought my company decided that I wasn't capable of running the company anymore and brought in a big gun beauty CEO who unfortunately made some bad decisions along with the owners, and the company had been in decline and was about to fully go kaput. And so I just last week bought it back which is why I'm crying a lot right now. Because our company has a right to win and a reason to exist, and there are 40,000 women that we represent around the United States and Canada, and I just wasn't going to let it go. Sorry, did I kill the night on that one?
I'm just going to add that I think, interestingly, and this is not for now, and everyone's cold, but there probably should be a different way. I've been thinking about this quite a lot, because I could write a book about the number of founders, and I'm one of them, who ended up nearly losing the company, selling it, and then it going really wrong. And actually, I think the role of a founder in a company is very important. And so there's lots of examples where sort of founders sell out because they obviously want to realize some money, and then they often have some equity left in, and it just goes quite wrong. It might be better to be a slightly sort of softer curve more than this sort of hockey stick. To keep a role for founders, because actually I think they're quite essential actually in driving businesses. So it's an interesting topic. We should write that book. We'll do that when
it is a book.
Once you've mended your company, we'll do the book. Okay? I should probably stop it there.
And proof that you are the right person for the job.
Yeah. No, it is, and actually, sorry, then we should stop it here, but I do think that it's the, I said earlier that this, when you asked what success looked like, or how we define success, the scorecard in the business world has always been about money. And the reality is, it is imperative that we shift that paradigm, that it is about taking care of people and the planet and turning a profit. And there needs to be a better way for venture capital and private equity to put money behind businesses that matter, while allowing those that are running those companies to enjoy upside, but not be beholden to the confines or the construct of funds. And it's one of the things that I'm incredibly passionate about, is figuring out better ways to provide capital, allowing people to earn money because they've taken a chance, but also not ousting founders and early stage leadership teams just because it seems easier to bring in the corporate people when they're just looking at spreadsheets. And so I think if there's an entrepreneur out there, we'd all love to partner with you both on the book and figuring out that business model.
Okay, well, and with that, thank you all for coming. Woo!